Hey guys, it's Khadroth again. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about the Koyanskaya system. I've had a couple people ask me about this, so we're going to go into it a little in depth, but not so much. This is meant to be a brief overview of kind of what makes the system as well as Koyanskaya's character great. So we're going to go ahead and start out with Koyanskaya herself. So, as you guys can see here, Koyanskaya has certainly revolutionized the game a little bit for Buster. A lot of people were originally saying like, oh my god, are we ever going to get a Buster 50% charge support? And sure enough, we did. Here it goes. So let's briefly touch on Koyanskaya's kit, and you guys will see kind of what I'm talking about. So right off the bat, Koyanskaya has 11.6 in terms of attack power. That's pretty good. It's about 4th for all assassins right now. Her HP value is 1300, and that is about 6 for assassins. Just remember though too, in regards to assassins have that 0.9 class modifier on attack, so not really the best of attack stats. That'll put her down again into the 10,000s, but still overall pretty good. And it's not going to be a big factor, and I think you guys are going to see why, because essentially we are going to have really nice modifiers in her kit. Now, looking at her NP gain rate here, she's actually pretty much in the middle of the pack for assassins. It's not that great, it's not that bad, it's just okay. But for a servant that has 50% attack power, or sorry, not 50% attack power, 50% charge, and has again, really good hit counts on all of her cards pretty much, I am okay with this. This is a nice stat for her to have at this point. Now, she does end up being demonic, a demonic beast servant, which again, you guys can see she actually has that beast attribute, which is really nice. That means for damage purposes, she is neutral to everyone other than Star Trait, which she has advantage over. So it's a pretty nice attribute to have on your character. She is divine, female humanoid, riding, servant, and weak to intimate Elish. So pretty standard in that regard, but yeah, there's some nice stuff in that kit. Her alignment is lawful evil, so you can take that accordingly if you have someone that can exploit those niches against her, but still pretty nice in overall summary of her kit. Looking here at her skills, the first skill we want to start out with here is going to be Innovator Bunny. Now, this one is the much talked about skill. This is the absolute like game changer with regards to Koyanskaya. Koyanskaya doesn't do so much that's different from other supports. There's nothing that can't be done really in her kit until we get to this skill. And it's not that you can't do it, it's just the ease at which she does it, and it is the cooldown of 2 here. So not to look a gift horse in the mouth here, but the 50% targetable charge is very nice, but that also comes with some considerations. And I've actually been talking with a couple people over the past couple days about this, and how one of the odd limitations that they did with Koyanskaya is similar to what they did with Scotty. So they end up locking her charge. She's got that block 50 charge, and while that's certainly great, you definitely want 50% charge, you also don't want to have it all in one block if you can help it. Being able to split up your charge at times is really nice, and this actually does hamper a couple of the 50% chargers depending on how it gets used. Still though, with regards to this skill coming into the game and Buster absolutely needing that 50% charger, it is definitely helping Buster out as a class, as a system overall. It is absolutely allowing them not just to do what they could already do with the neutral sort of supports like Waver and Reigns, but it's allowing them to do it with even more card type and even more damage. That is really a nice thing. So having the 50% charge is not a bad thing by any means. Please don't take that the wrong way. It's just that sometimes you wish you could split it up, and that's going to be the unfortunate side of it, is figuring out how to use it. Also, it's low-key the smart thing they did here by tying the skill reduction to this skill, because it limits the usability of it. It forces you to only be able to use it at certain times. So it's going to be harder to use, say, on turn 1 with a lot of people where you want to start out at max charge. But the new append system, which I'll actually be talking about later, is actually going to be a really nice thing for that, because it's going to allow a lot of free-to-plays and people that just have maybe the 1K scope to basically have the equivalent of a super scope. not so much in terms of damage, but in terms of that starting charge and the comps and the mystic code uses and stuff that it allows. So really nice for that. But still, it's going to limit when you can use this, so be careful a little bit. This is sort of where we've talked about this now. Buster is almost becoming a little big brain. You guys have to be careful with how you use the cooldown reductions and the order in which you use skills. You guys have seen me do this on the Lotto guides very frequently. As I walk you through skill order, I will often talk about, you know, kind of the order you should ideally pop things in to make things work appropriately. And you can certainly shift it around at times, but Koyanskaya is going to lock that down a little bit with this cooldown reduction. You're almost always going to want to get skills out before you put this skill on someone so that you have the chance of getting back to another one. Again, the 1000 demerit here that she has is ultimately kind of a concern, and the reason here is because probably the worst part of Koyanskaya, she provides no survivability. I have had a lot of people ask me over the past couple days, Cad, what do you think about Merlin now? Cad, do you think Merlin's dead? Do you think she's power creeping Merlin? Offensively, possibly, but overall, is Merlin dead? No, Merlin is still really useful, and that's why Merlin provides the survivability, the sustain that Koyanskaya doesn't. In fact, one of the best comps is going to be Koyanskaya with Merlin for challenge content, because you're going to get that cooldown reduction, which can obviously help Merlin as well, potentially, and you're going to again get that survivability and party-wide protection that you need out of Merlin. This is actually very similar to the way that the arts comps have functioned for a while. A lot of people asked me, did OG Tamamo kind of die out with Castoria? And the answer is no. Sometimes the better comp is actually Castoria and OG Tamamo rather than just double Castoria, because the one thing Castoria lacks is sustain. She has that ability to negate damage overall, but eventually she'll get chipped down because she has no healing. So sometimes you got to put that in the kit. And that's exactly where I can see Koyanskaya just being another tool in Buster's arsenal, but not the one size fits all solution. So keep that one in mind. Also, pay attention to skill cooldowns as we go throughout the video here. I'm going to talk about that in a little second, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about the skill cooldown reduction in detail. So, her second skill here is Aptitude for Slaughterman A. Again, this is going to increase damage against human enemies for 3 turns. Now, a lot of you guys might be thinking, oh wow, there's a lot of human enemies in the game. That's really good. Do not confuse this with the humanoid attribute. The humanoid attribute is absolutely stellar. The human attribute is not. It is very restrictive. And just to show you guys this is the enemy table for human attributes. So you guys can see it's mostly just like easy early farm node type of enemies. Very rarely are you going to see any of these enemies be a high health boss at the end of a node. Maybe in some hunting quests, maybe in some sort of Camelot related stuff, you might see an enforcement knight, you might see a ghost from time to time as well. But overall, you're not going to see too many human traded enemies that you're really going to need this niche for. So it's nice to have, but ultimately it's sort of why other people that have the anti-human niche are sort of regarded as not being that good, and people wish that they instead had humanoid. So that's kind of why. Humanoid affects every single servant in the game, I believe, except 2, and I think it's Summer BB and I'm trying to remember, it might be a Buki in her first form or something like that. So there's basically a much wider niche at play with humanoid than there is human. But still, overall, better to have something than nothing. Still, we get to the next aspect here, and we get damage increased against the man attribute. That's actually good. And just to show you guys this, here's the man attribute page on Fandom, and boom, there you go, just scrolling down the list. There's a whole lot more enemies and servants that fall under this, including most of the same people that fell under the human niche. So it's kind of hilarious in that regard that you get way more applicability with this in the kit. So ultimately, that is something that is going to be really nice. And I've had a couple people ask me, there's definitely some people that can be very effective with this power mod that she has here, particularly Morgan Le Fay, who is anti-man already. So that is a really nice synergy between the two. And that is just going to be basically what I call a man-eater at that point. She is going to just slaughter anyone that has the man trait. So ultimately, though, here we also get another interesting aspect, which is whenever we attack with a Buster card, we are going to charge the NP gauge by up to 10%. Unfortunately, it is normal attacks only. This does not affect the NP. So be careful with that. It's not going to allow you to refund more on the back end of your MP unless you can card. So there's sort of a weird sort of gimmick here where the more NP levels you have, the less likely you are to be able to take advantage of this in normal farming. The less MP levels you have, you maybe don't clear the enemy wave completely, and the more you're likely to be able to take advantage of this. But with all the buffs flying around and the damage in the comp, I think you guys should be able to mostly clear and it not being so much of a thing. So I see this being more of a thing for challenge content where there's going to be break bars and stuff like that. Ultimately, though, probably the number one thing I think people are going to talk about on this skill is the gaining of the crit stars. The 20 crit star bomb is absolutely phenomenal. A lot of you guys just saw the buff to Jalter that gave her 30 crit stars. One of the big knocks against Avengers in general has always been their star soak rate. And while Jalter did have a star soak on her, it was not necessarily enough to gather all the stars available. And that's just because of Avengers' naturally low star absorption rate. So it's actually really nice to have this in a Buster comp because you can just bombard them. And that's something I've always said about Avengers, because the same sort of criticism happened with Mao Nobu, where people would use that to say that she was bad. Well, stars are very easy to get nowadays. You can get them off of mystic codes, you guys can get them off of craft essences, and you guys can get them off of servant skills. Particularly someone like Himiko can just absolutely flood the party with stars for a couple turns. So to me, I've never found that low absorption to be too big of a hurdle. You guys can always just answer that by flooding them with stars, and it works absolutely. And you guys now see that with Jalter. Delightworks is basically telling you that. But even more so here with Koyanskaya, you have another star flood into the comp. It's a very good thing. It's going to allow you to secure those crits, which is very important as we get to the third skill here. So Koyanskaya's third skill is NFF Special A, and it increases one ally's Buster performance for 3 turns by 50%. Hello, Merlin steroid. Really, really nice here. It's obviously not the exact same as Merlin steroid because of the 100% crit damage he gets to all cards for 1 turn on that, and the amount of max HP he also gets, allowing it to function as a little bit of a heal. But again, here we do get some crit damage of 50%, so it's not quite as strong as Merlin's, but it's 3 turns long. However, it's restrictive to Buster cards only. In fact, if you guys look, this entire skill is Buster only, including the crit star absorption. Now that is an insane modifier, and it's really good. That is the type of modifier I want to see to help out my Avengers, to help out my Berserkers, and anyone who's naturally low on star absorption. So it's a really, really good amount that you guys can get from that. And that on top of possibly potentially double Koyanskaya with the crit star bombs is just going to make it really easy to secure crits. Now keep in mind, because this is Buster only, you might not have a Buster card. But again, with this amount of stars, double Koyanskaya is going to get you guys 40 potentially if you have that middle skill Lord. That's good. You should be able to secure crits with that, even if you don't have the Buster card. Unfortunately, you wouldn't have the crit damage modifiers, but luckily in some of the Koyanskaya systems, you might be running someone that can give it. You might be running the Merlin, you might be running the Waver. So it's not ultimately going to be that big of a concern unless you just end up in a really bad spot where you maybe messed up the turn order or something. So I do think that Koyanskaya is really nice. I don't have to go too much into her passive skills here, other than to just show you that she does have some pretty insane ones. She gets crit damage of 12%. She gets a little bit of debuff immunity to certain things. She gets the arts performance of 10% and the crit star generation rate, kind of a la her OG form. And she gets Goddess Metamorphosis guns. She casts gun, chat. And she gets that additional 20% damage for her NP. So this is where I said that don't mind that attack stat, it's going to be fine. She gets a 50% Buster up, and she gets NP damage of 20% from a passive skill. That's pretty insane. Just briefly touching on her append, she gets the standard extra attack append and mana loading append. This one in particular can be really nice, again, if you've got that just normal K-scope for just starting her out at full charge. It's a really good idea to unlock that. And again, remember, unlocking is free other than the coins, so as long as you guys have the coins, as long as you guys aren't worried about grailing someone beyond 100, that should be a pretty easy choice of expenditure right there. And then the third skill is going to give her increased on attack against archer enemies. Again, I don't find these neutral append skills to be that good. I kind of want to wait and see, does the Lightworks do something more with the system, or do they actually recognize the fact that some of these are just legitimately bad and they need to adjust them? We'll see, but only time will tell on that. And then we get to her NP here. Her NP is AoE 8-hit Buster NP. It increases her own attack before the NP by 20%, so there's another steroid helping out her NP damage. She deals damage to all enemies and reduces their NP gauge by 1 tick. So really nice, she gets that AoE drain, so she's a 50% charger with AoE drain, a la Summer BB. That's again another aspect of Summer BB's kit that a lot of people overlook, and it can actually be really nice at times. She can also, on the back end here with the overcharge, charge the party's gauge by a base of 10%. It doesn't ultimately scale all that well, but still it's charge and it's welcome more than it's not. So this can absolutely help you out, especially if you have maybe someone who's struggling to be able to handle a 3-turn with Koyanskaya. I'll give you guys a particular example of this. Most of the 20% chargers tend to struggle with that. And the reason being is because what I'm going to talk about right now is going to be, again, that first skill and the cooldown here. So this cooldown, and the reason it is so important is because it absolutely allows you to do things that other supports can't. Okay, you guys may have noticed from looking through her kit, a lot of supports tend to have an attack up or a defense down somewhere in their kit, some sort of just basic charisma or something to give to the party. Koyanskaya doesn't, and the reason for that is purely because of the fact that she has this. If your servant that you're using with Koyanskaya to loop has a charisma or a multi-turn modifier skill, a power mod, a attack or defense down, a card type up or down for multiple turns, you guys might be able to stack it with this. You guys might be able to reduce the cooldown enough to either do it in multiple turns or in the same turn. So let's talk about this. If someone, for instance, were to have an 8-turn cooldown like Koyanskaya, it means that you guys should be able to, well, okay, let's briefly talk about the number of cooldowns that are available. If you're using double Koyanskaya, you guys can get -4 based off of the 2 reductions right there. If you guys are using the Atlas MC, you guys can get another 2, so that's 6. But there's still 2 more, and that 2 more is if we're in a 3-turn. Every single turn you go reduces the cooldowns by 1. So by the 3rd turn, you would have gotten 2 cooldown reductions. There's a total of -8 available. So if you're at this -8, you can do it, but you're going to have to pop the skill on the 1st turn and the 3rd turn then. So it's very restrictive in an 8-turn cooldown environment. Now, surely you guys could work in more cooldown. There are other, or cooldown reduction. There are other units out there in the game that do that, but be careful, because at that point you're probably messing with the comp a little bit too much. It's synergy, its ability to just be buster and offensive. So you might be bringing in someone like Maid Alter, someone like OG Tamamo and NP with her or something like that. But again, so you can get access to more. Those are just the ones that I recommend for synergy. And you guys are going to see Atlas Institute Mystic codes are actually going to be pretty prominently featured in Koyanskaya systems because of the fact that they get you even more cooldown reduction. Sometimes that might be better than just trying to use an offensive Mystic code, but I digress. So again, with an 8, you can do it on the 1st and the 3rd. When it's 7 and you use the Atlas Institute, you guys can also do it back to back. So you could do that on 1st and 2nd turn, or you could do that on 2nd and 3rd turn. And that might be really nice. When it's 6, you guys, without the Atlas, can now do it on 1st and 3rd turn. So you can pop the skill on turn 1 and have it back for turn 3. And then when it's a 5 cooldown skill, you guys can do it back to back without Atlas being the mystic code. That is really strong. There are a couple people out there that have that. And so what that means is, again, if you have someone that has 50% charge and you guys can use their skill twice, they're now a 100% charger. If you have a 30% charger that can use it twice, they're now a 60% charger. And if you're a 20% charger that can use it twice, you're now a 40% charger. And that's where I've said the 40%ers are going to be the ones that struggle. And a lot of the 40%ers actually end up needing Koyanskaya's NP here with the 10% refund to help her out. So what they'll do is they'll end up having Koyanskaya take out wave 1 or something like that, give the 10% charge to them, and then basically abuse that for getting their 20% doubled up for 40% for a total of 50. And that turns them into a low-key 50% charger who's always been able to 3-turn in a buster type system, it provided you had that starting charge. So really nice. Again, I do find that the 20%ers are the ones that are actually probably getting hurt the most. And there are a couple of weird circumstances, like with Lartoria or Artoria Bunny Ruler, who they refund 20% on the back of their MP, but they also have a huge block charge that Koyanskaya doesn't work well with them, because there's only so many block 50 charges you guys can fit in the party. You guys saw probably my video on Oberon and that he's probably coming out here soon. Oberon's still not necessarily going to help that because he's another block 50% charge. So if you're trying not to waste charge, you could end up in a weird spot because you have too many 50% charges. And that's where I'm going to say some of these units are going to struggle. But there's still ways around that. I do know other ways to make it work. In fact, I can probably get Lartoria to 3-turn with a Black Grail using the new unit Khadroth. So again, there are some ways you guys can make it work, but it might not be the most efficient thing or the thing you want to do other than to flex or something like that. Or in a challenge quest even. So keep that in mind. Also, remember, this is not exclusive to charge skills. This can be used for things like Bunny Artoria's card shuffle, Summer BB's card lock. This can be used for offensive skills like charisma or a multiple turn mana burst. So there's some really interesting applications of this skill cooldown. And this is why I say it's big brain. Learn to think out of the box with this and you will actually be pretty well off. This is an amazing ability and I can't wait to see what people do with it. So the last thing I wanted to briefly touch on here is going to actually be Koyanskaya's NP damage. And it's a little bit hard to see here, so let me kind of switch this up. But there you guys go. Here's Koyanskaya up here, basically at number 2 right now. She is just behind Shootin' overall for NP1 here, but a little bit, she still has those 2 traits and all that support capability. So even just as an offensive AoE assassin, despite that attack stat, she's really good still. Again, so you would think she's got the 4th highest attack stat for assassins, that she might be a little lower here. Nope, she's still really, really nice. Now, you guys can do Imperial Privilege with Cleo to bump her up ahead of that, but you're not going to have that charge. Cleo's, to me, a lot better for challenge environments and carding things out, because her card performance is actually really good. And you've got Semiramis here, who basically is going to struggle to just hit that same number as Koyanskaya because of the restrictions of getting that 50% buster down. Ultimately, not bad though. In fact, you should be able to use all of them in tandem because of the fact that it's a star bomb that's required in Semiramis's case. And well, it's the same thing with Koyanskaya. She has the star bomb that she needs. So ultimately, you don't have to look at this as X unit is greater than Y or anything like that. It's just important to understand where everybody has landed. And right now, I think Koyanskaya is actually doing really good in NP damage, even if we exclude the traits. So overall, I think Koyanskaya is going to be an amazing unit and possibly, you know, I hesitate to ever say must have, but a really, really, really solid choice, especially for those of you guys that like Buster memes. All right. That's going to be it for me, and I will see you guys for the next video. Thank you guys. Good luck.